Sorry, I was on Titles 55 and I was supposed to be on Titles 57. Day 57. I'll be right back. I have to get our book. The Wild Swans by Hans Christian Andersen. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I thought about, here's another, this is a Yearling Newbery Award book, which is like a Scholastic Award. I think they were better though. I think these were even better books. So The Sign of the Beaver. I thought about reading that one. There were a few of these, what would you call these? Timepieces or whatever, right? That I thought about reading. But instead, I wanted to read another. I knew it was SEN. You know what? That's wrong. I knew it was SEN. That's wrong on the, that is wrong on the internet. He is a Dutch author. Is that better? Yeah, that's better. Okay, I knew it was SEN. Then I went to look it up online. I got this book for just pittance. Illustrated by Juan Alonso Diaz Toledo. Translated from the original text by Marley Alex. Let's take this down. So beautiful illustrations. Let's see here. I did read a little bit about Hans Christian Andersen online yesterday. He was a fairy tale writer. So let's just see. We're just going to see. Barron's Fairy Tales. We're just going to see. So let me make sure you see all the pictures, though, because they are pretty. Okay, let's get started. All right, you can see. Far, far away, where the swallows fly in the winter, lived a king who had 11 sons and one daughter, Alyssa. When the 11 princes went to school, they wore stars on their chests and carried swords at their sides. They wrote on golden tablets with diamond pencils and could recite their lessons by heart. Sounds like a little overkill. Their sister, Alyssa, sat on a little chair made of mirror glass and looked at a picture book which had cost half the kingdom. Wow. Apparently she's very deserving of a picture book. It costs half the kingdom. Interesting. The children were very fortunate, but it wouldn't always remain that way. Or wouldn't always remain like that. I'll read the words instead of improvising. Their father married a wicked queen who was not at all good to the poor children. Things were different from the very first day. The palace had been decorated so the children played house in the courtyard, but instead of getting all the cakes and roasted apples they wished, she gave them only sand in a teacup and told them just to pretend it was something better. That's what we had to do with our tea, though. We had to pretend it was something better. A week later, she sent Alyssa to live with some peasants in the country, and it wasn't long before the queen had influenced the king so that he didn't care at all for the 11 princes any longer. Well, that's not a very good father. Most dads don't forget their kids that easily. That's from my experience. Fly out into the world and take care of yourselves, screamed the wicked queen. Wait, did I skip a page? I guess not. Okay, well. Fly out into the world and take care of yourselves, screamed wicked queen to the brothers. Fly like great birds without voices. But she was not able to put as terrible a curse on them as she wished. With a strange cry, they flew out of the palace windows and over the forest. So that was her spell, right? Fly out like great birds without voices. That's what I feel like sometimes, a great bird without voices, without a voice. While it was still early morning, they flew over the cottage where their sister Alyssa was sleeping. Swerving over the rooftop, they craned their long necks and flapped their wings, but no one heard or saw them. So away they flew into the clouds and the wide world. In the peasant cottage, poor little Alyssa played with a leaf, for she hadn't any other toys. Well, she only had one book before, so she didn't really lose a lot. She made a hole in the leaf and looked through it up at the sun. It reminded her of the bright eyes of her brothers, and each time the warm sunbeams shone on her cheeks, she thought of all their kisses. One day passed just like the other. The wind blew through the big rose hedge outside and whispered to the roses, "Who can be more beautiful than you?" But the roses shook their heads and said, "Alyssa is." On Sundays, the peasant woman sat in the doorway and read her psalm book. The wind rippled the pages and said to the book, "Who can be more devout than you?" "Alyssa is," said the psalm book, and it was perfectly true. What does this sound like? Sounds like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So it goes to show you cultures share the same story, which is a very interesting prospect, isn't it? When she was 15 years old, Alyssa was brought home to the palace. The queen was angry and spiteful when she saw how beautiful Alyssa had grown. She would have changed her mind. She would have changed her to a wild swan like her brothers, but she dared not do it because the king wished to see his daughter. Apparently didn't care about his sons at all, though. They made that clear, though. Early one morning, the queen went into the marble bathroom that was decorated with soft cushions and lush carpets. She took 3 toads with her, kissed them, and said to the first, "Sit on Alyssa's head when she comes to bathe so that she becomes lazy like you." To the second, she commanded, "Sit on her forehead so that she becomes ugly and her father will not recognize her." To the third, she whispered, "Rest upon her heart so that she may be tormented by an evil mind." Wow. I get it, though. Some people feel really bad, don't they? Let's keep reading the story. I bet you get it. Then she put the toads into the clear water. It turned green immediately. She called Alyssa and told her to undress and go down into the water. Oh, that was the queen who was saying that. Never mind. It wasn't Alyssa. Never mind. That was the queen. She called Alyssa and told her to undress and go down into the water. When Alyssa entered the water, the first toad sat on her hair, the second on her forehead, and the third on her breast. But it seemed as if Alyssa took no notice. As soon as she got out again, 3 red poppies floated on the water. If the toads had not been made poisonous by the kiss of the witch, they would have become red roses. But they did at least become flowers just by resting on Alyssa's head and heart. She was so pure and innocent that the magic had no power over her. When the wicked queen saw this, she rubbed Alyssa's skin with walnut juice until it became dark brown. She wiped her beautiful face with a smelly lotion and let it tangle her lovely hair. It was impossible to recognize Alyssa. When her father saw her, he exclaimed, "This girl cannot be my daughter." No one recognized her except the dog and the swallows, but they were mere animals and so couldn't say a word. Alyssa sobbed. She longed for her 11 absent brothers. Sadly, she slipped out of the palace and walked over the fields and through the marshland toward the forest. So there's the evil queen, obviously, and there's beautiful Alyssa with the frog on her head. Doesn't even matter, does it? She hadn't the least idea where she was going. She was broken-hearted and decided to look for her brothers. She imagined they had probably been driven from the castle just as she had been. Alyssa entered the forest only a short time before nightfall. She left the pathway, lay down on the dim moss, and said her evening prayer. It was very quiet. The air was warm, and around about the palace where she lay, hundreds of glowworms shone like green firelight. When she softly touched one of the branches, the glowworms fell like shooting stars. I haven't seen those glowworms before. I said to my early bird classroom to try and find lightning bugs and don't kill them. We have a lot of lightning bugs. They say they're disappearing, but not here in Michigan, thank goodness, because I love them. Throughout the night, Alyssa dreamed of her brothers. In her dreams, they played again as children, wrote with diamond pencils on golden tablets, and looked at the picture book, which had cost half the kingdom. But they didn't merely draw numbers and sketches as they had before. Instead, they wrote the loveliest poems about all they had done, seen, and heard. And in the picture book, everything was living. The birds sang aloud, and the people left the pages of the book and spoke to Alyssa and her brothers. When she turned the pages, they jumped in again, and so the pictures wouldn't get mixed up. When Alyssa awoke, the sun was so high she couldn't see it behind the dense trees, but the sunbeams played around her like sprinkling gold dust. There was a fragrance of greenery, and the birds fluttered near her shoulder. She heard water bubbling like a fountain, and following the sound came a pond fed by many large springs. Thick bushes grew around it, but at one place the deer had dug an opening, and Alyssa crawled through it down to the water. The water was so clear that if the bushes and branches had not been swaying in the wind, she would have thought they were painted on the bottom, for each leaf was reflected in detail. When Alyssa saw the reflection of her own face, she was frightened, for it was so brown and ugly. She rubbed her eyes and forehead with water until her white skin shone through. Then she undressed and swam into the fresh water to bathe. A lovelier princess could not be found anywhere in the whole world. Dressed again, Alyssa braided her long hair and drank of the bubbling fountain, then wandered farther into the forest. She thought about her brothers and about her loving lord, who surely would not forsake her. It was he who had made wild apple trees to satisfy the hungry, and who showed her a certain tree with branches weighted down by fruit. Here she ate lunch, then put props under the tree's branches before continuing on the darkest part of the forest. It was so quiet she could hear the sound of her own footsteps and of each little withered leaf that crunched beneath her feet. There was not a single bird to be seen, not a beam of light penetrating the large, intertwining tree branches. The tree trunks were so close to each other that when she looked straight ahead, it was as if she were shut in by a fence. She felt a loneliness she had never known before. I want to make sure that we can see most of this. There we go. The night was very dark. Not a single glowworm shone in the moss. Sadly, she lay down to sleep. The next day, Alyssa met an old woman who gave her some berries from a basket. Alyssa asked if she had seen 11 princes riding through the forest. No, said the old woman, but yesterday I saw 11 swans wearing golden crowns swimming in the stream close to here. She led Alyssa a bit farther to a bank over a curving stream. The trees on the shore spread their long, leafy branches over the water towards each other, and where they could not reach, they had pulled their roots out of the soil to lean farther across. Alyssa said goodbye to the old woman and walked beside the stream until she came to an open beach. The great ocean lay before the young girl, but there was not a boat or ship in sight. How was she to go farther? She studied the countless small stones on the beach. The water had made them round and smooth. Glass, iron, and granite had taken on the character of the water and had become softer than her delicate hand. The ocean is tireless at polishing these hard stones. I will be just as tireless. Thank you for your wisdom, rolling waves. My heart tells me that one day you will carry me to my dear brothers. Let's look at the time here. Okay, all right. I think that is page 17. We are going to start with page 18 when we get back. All right. So I think that was... I'm going to read one more. I'm going to read one more page because it seems to me like I probably did a lot of talk or more talking than I did reading. Let's read one more page. Along with the seaweed that had been washed ashore were 11 white swan feathers. Alyssa gathered them into a bouquet. There was a drop of water on each of them. Whether it was dew or a teardrop, no one could see. It was lonesome along the beach, but Alyssa didn't feel lonely, for the ocean was constantly changing, more than the inland lakes did in an entire year. If a large cloud rolled over, it was as if the ocean wanted to say, I can also look dark and angry. And then the wind blew and the waves turned their white side out. But if the sky was red and the wind slept, the ocean was soft as a rose petal. But no matter how quietly it rested, there was always a gentle movement along the beach as the water softly heaved like the breast of a sleeping child. When the sun was close to setting, Alyssa saw 11 swans wearing golden crowns flying toward land. They glided one after the other like a long white ribbon. Alyssa climbed upon a cliff and hid behind a bush. The swans landed close to her, flapping their large white wings. As the sun sank below the water, their swan feathers fell away suddenly, and there stood 11 princes. Oh, baby, can I just have one of them? What? I mean, after all, they are your brothers. Alyssa's brothers. She cried out in joy, for even though they had changed, she knew it was them. She felt it must be them. She jumped into their arms and called them by name. They were overjoyed when they saw and recognized their little sister who had grown up and was so lovely. They laughed together, and soon they understood how wickedly their stepmother had treated them all. Always a wicked stepmother. What about that wicked stepfather? I've heard about him. We can't write children's stories about him. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. Thanks for joining me in the reading room. We will continue on page 2021, when we are back here on Tuesday in the reading room. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. I'm the teacher. Thanks for joining me here in the classroom.